Welcome in. I'm Daisy Mack. This is Spiritual Mixtape. Today's episode is about that Friday feeling, and I hope you haven't lost it. And this episode should connect you back in to whatever that Friday feeling is for you. Back in the day when I was younger, there was actually a really famous advert in the UK for Crunchy, which is a Cadbury's chocolate. It was all about getting that Friday feeling. There are so many things to be nostalgic about from the 90s, and one of them was the incredible adverts. Anyway, that's a very big side note. That Friday feeling, absolutely all of my clients and everyone I speak to at the moment does not have the Friday feeling. They don't have the Monday feeling, the Wednesday feeling. All they have is stress. And it feels like every day after work, your jaw is tight, you are carrying stress, you are working later, you are more connected than ever before. And that Friday feeling is something so far away, it's almost a joke. I want to spend time on that today because I feel like COVID's a distant memory. We all sort of slowed down in COVID and sorted our priorities somewhat. And I'm not saying that that's like a time to romanticize or that it was a time we should go back to. Far from it. What I'm saying about it is that we were able to slow down. For me, I have to be really honest. I've had a secret Friday ritual for the longest time because I was the most stressy person by the time we hit a Friday, especially because in my old life, I worked Monday to Friday and then I worked the weekends as well, because when you look after DJs, when you work with artists, shows are at the weekend. In the office all week, no such thing as a Friday night. But I got kind of obsessed about my Friday night stress melt. And I shared this idea with the amazing guys at Rome, which is a studio I love to teach at here in LA. And Jen, who's one of the owners, said, having a space to decompress that is not centered around socializing or drinking would be an awesome offering. This was us like brainstorming like what we were going to do together. But put all of that aside of like what is the end product from this, put all of that aside and just come to that idea of like, what on earth do you do on a Friday night to down-regulate the stress if it isn't going for a drink? And I talk about my dad a lot on this podcast, and my dad was always a quick drink on a Friday night. And it was actually quite lovely the way my dad would do it, because we would all go and see him. Like if I was in London or he was in London, and wherever he was in the world, he would always have a Friday night drink. But it was different from my dad, because I feel like pubs back then was so much more social and there were so many more. And I feel like I'm advocating for everybody going to the pub. You do you. But I don't have a pub in LA, and I feel like I didn't really have a pub in London either. My life was so hectic and so stressful, and I worked at the weekends as well, or my work never really switched off. The thought of having a drink to decompress when, I was probably going to have to go to a show and drink was just the last thing I wanted to do. And the pubs that my dad went to, I feel like they don't exist anymore. These like sweet little like cheruby pubs where everyone's quite, cute and sweet and full of fun stories. I just don't think that exists where you could have your local anymore. And even if it did, a Friday night drink would only elevate my stress. I've had a secret Friday night ritual for the longest time. When I was in the music industry, everyone, expected me to go out. And for the largest part, I would have to go out. I would have to go to shows. But before I got there, especially if the show was on a Saturday and not on a Friday, I would go to a class. That was my Friday night stress melt. And I wouldn't tell anyone about it. I would leave the office, let people assume that I was going somewhere terribly glamorous or going to a dinner. And the actual place I'd be going to is the yoga studio and going to candlelit yoga. And I just didn't want to tell people about it because I think that I would have got teased and I think that I would have got judged. And you've got to remember that this is like 15 years ago, and I was in my 20s and in my early 30s. And I think that people are so different about wellness now. But you would have got teased back then for doing something like that. Or people would have, said something behind your back. And I just didn't want to have my special ritual that made me feel so much better up for scrutiny. So I just didn't tell anyone and just do it alone. And then I'd go home and read a book. And for the largest part, that's still how I downregulate the stress. And it's worth talking about what those Friday night candlelit yoga classes offered that I wasn't getting anywhere else. It was slow time. No expectations of me. I could have just gone into that class and laid on the mat and no one would have said anything. The whole idea of yoga for me back then was such a revelation. I had very bad psoriasis and I used to go to Bikram yoga, and obviously we know what we know now about Bikram, but in terms of that particular studio that I went to in East London, I remember a lady sitting next to me on a Friday night, and she said, "You just don't need to come covered up anymore." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "You've got psoriasis, right? It's better for your skin if you just let your skin breathe. And you come in a shorts and a bra, and no one's going to look at you and no one's going to care, and it's going to be better for your skin and you'll heal quicker." And I just remember being like, oh my God, I can actually be myself in this room. I don't need to pretend that I'm okay. What's crazy about being in the office, I'm sure the people would be nice about it, but I worked so hard in this job where I couldn't even be seen as me. Wild, isn't it? And again, like, that could have been a Daisy thing as opposed to what the job was actually doing. But I can tell you this, after that lady, thank you, wherever you are in the world right now, after she said that to me, I would go in and change into my shorts and my sports bra, and my skin did clear up. The first time and the only time in my life I've had abs. It's still am like, wow, they were really underneath all of that. How wonderful that at least one time in the week I could just be me in all my imperfection. And I get why I couldn't have been an imperfect version of me at work. People were paying me to be perfect and brilliant. But outside of that identity, I have to have the downtime. I have to have the thing that makes me feel like I'm connected to that natural frequency and back into myself, that all of the money things and the work things don't matter, and that I'm still there underneath it all. And it really wasn't until I was thinking about this episode that I was like, why have I never told anyone this? I'm literally building these rooms for other Daisies, Daniel's, Patrick's, Paul's. I am literally building that same safe environment, yet I still hide how I felt and haven't quite made peace with how much I hid myself. And I know I've talked about it a lot recently because of the Coachella stuff, and I'm not ashamed. It's just not been something I've told. Yet me not telling you this is me not actually saying to a friend, hey, have you found a point in the week where you really, really, really take it back to yourself? And the reason why I think the Friday night is so much more luxurious and important for you to have that stress melt on that night is because most of us work Monday to Friday, and you just can't enjoy the weekend fully unless you leave some of that stuff in the office, whether you leave it at the door, whether you leave it on your yoga mat in the candlelit yoga class, or for me in my stress melting breathwork class on a Friday night instead. How lovely to socialize and be with other people and breathe with other people without having the forced pressure of having to have a drink. I'm not advocating for people to never drink again or that drinking's bad. I want you to know that really only terrible things are bad. A spiritual mixtape, stuff that you could go to jail for. Only that. If you want to have a drink or any of those things, everything in moderation, as they say. I mean, I'm a huge reality TV addict, and that's not terribly spiritually aligned, but everything in moderation. But my Friday night stress melt, since we mentioned the reality TV, cannot be reality TV. Every now and again, sure, let's put something that is just going to be bubblegum for the mind and have a pizza and sit there. But for me, a real stress melt of really taking that cortisol down in the body, I actually have to change my state. For me, the quickest way of doing that is through breath work. I'm now really obsessed with fascia. That's next week's episode. You're going to get that one. But in short, fascia is the gel that holds our bones and our organs in place. And the thing that's really incredible that we didn't understand about fascia before is that it has 50 million nerve endings. So it's more than the skin, and it holds memory. and it holds happiness. We didn't understand that. And the reason why I've become a little obsessed with it lately is because I had that big operation in November. Next Thursday's episode is about the fascia and why it's good and what you can do about taking care of your fascia. Because when you're in trauma, your wonderful fascia, which is this sort of fluid, gel-like water in your body, contracts and becomes hard, or contracts and stiffens. And that stops your body awareness because all those nerve endings are just frozen in space and time. I'll get into it in the next episode. But my Friday night stress melt, watching a stressy reality TV program is probably going to make it worse. So I have to do things like a class or like my own personal ritual at some point in the week. And I know I've told you I do breath work every day, and that is true. But the busier I get, and everybody is busier right now, and everybody's worried about money, and everybody's like, there's a reason to work a little bit harder right now and give yourself less of that time. But you can't not do it. So how I do it, ideally I go to a class, I find someone who can take care of me, and then I don't have to think. And if I find the right teacher, timed with movement too. And for me, movement is usually a restorative yoga type practice, a yin restorative. I want to be in the duvet, in the comforter, in the blanket. But for me, I can't just go and lie on my bed. The creation of that safe feeling, that big warm feeling, uses disciplines like somatic movement, meditation, yoga, music, sound. And this isn't really a spiritual thing, if I'm honest with you. You don't have to meditate. You just have to be a human that is working. I don't even need to be working. I just think modern life is so exhausting right now, especially with the news cycle and how wild everything is. I had a friend text me this morning and say, is everything just flipped? Am I crazy, or is the world crazy? And I think that the best of us are a little crazy, but I do think that we're in a pressure cooker right now. And the only thing that you can control is your experience of it, so that modern life doesn't drive you insane. Leave it at the end of the week on the mat. Leave it in your ritual. And you can create this at home. Hot bath and breath, favorite. Get yourself some bubble bath, some Epsom salts, whatever you have in your budget, and just enjoy it, but also add movement, add the breath into it. And I will teach you a little bit of the breath. Here is what I do at home. James is away on tour. I have the house to myself. The dogs are not being insane. I have the lights dimmed. I have my fake candles, but I also have real candles. I save the real candles actually for when I have the bath. And then I do a little bit more breathing in there, just really gentle. And I try and disconnect. It's really tempting when you have ADHD to constantly be listening to music or playing a talking book. And I really try in these moments where I'm doing the stress melt ritual to just have nothing, unless it's my own bowls, which maybe sometimes I'll do for myself. I probably, again, don't do as much as I should. And I promise myself 2 hours. Isn't that wild that we have this whole week, yet promising yourself 2 hours with no social media, no television, no contact, just you, not even necessarily a book, just doing something that puts you back in your body. It feels really hard, doesn't it? If someone asked you for help for 2 hours, you'd do it, no problem. But we ignore all the signs in which our body is asking us for the same help. Your very sad contracted fascia, for an example. So let me just remind you of the breath pattern that I teach. It's up to you whether you want to do this or not, but I invite you here to just breathe with me for 1 minute. We're going to breathe into the belly, then we're going to take a second sip into the heart and out. Breathing in and again and out. Breathe in and again and out. Breathe in and again and out. Breathe in again, out. Let's do 2 more. Breathe in again, out. Breathe in again, out. That's all you have to do when you're doing your stress melt. Whether you do it in the bath, on the sofa, you go out onto your balcony, into your garden, sit under the stars. Take a moment this Friday. I challenge you. How difficult is that to commit to that? Can you commit to 4 Fridays in a row? I'm not saying you don't go out afterwards, you don't go to a dinner, but could you put aside 2 hours? Could you put aside 20 minutes for 4 weeks and actually do this? It's so much harder than we think, which is 100% why we should be doing it. How often in your week are you doing this? How much do you bring your stress home? How much do you bring all your good vibes to your work? I know they're quite hard questions, and I hope that this isn't triggering for you. I was the most dysregulated person, and I still figured it out and I got to the other side. And if I can do it, anyone can do it. So I end this episode by saying I'd love to see you at the Friday Night Stress Melt in LA. We're going to do it 4 times a year. The first one is on the 1st of May, coming up in a week. And I love that studio room. Originally, it was the Buddhist Hall in Frogtown in Silver Lake. It's so beautiful and just the most perfect acoustics. So if you want to come for the Friday Night Stress Melt, it'll be breath work and a sound bath and a social. I'd love to see you there. And if you are far from LA and can't get there, I do have the Stress Relief Breathwork in the free community. Go in, make an account, it's all free. Do that breath work with whatever it is that you're doing. So you just get under the duvets, light a fire, whatever it is, enjoy. Make it part of your ritual. You really, really, really deserve that Friday feeling returned to you. See you next week.